So back in the early 2000s, there was a lab that was made specifically for checking voting machines through a company called CIBER Incorporated. It sounds pretty official, right? But instead of writing their own test protocols for these machines, they were letting the people who made the machines, the voting machine vendors, write their own test scripts for if the machines were safe or not to use in our elections. The people who had millions of tax dollars writing on if they passed these tests were the ones who wrote the tests. All that CIBER did was stamp a rubber stamp of approval on it. That's it. They were literally just the guys you would pay to pass your machines. There was no actual independent testing ever done through CIBER. And the guy who was managing that, the project director, his name was Jack Cobb. And he still certifies your voting machines today. Now let's talk about what CIBER was actually supposed to do. They were a VSTL, or a voting system test lab. They were a interim certified lab whose entire job was to make sure that the machines that, counted our votes were secure. No backdoors, no issues where these machines could be manipulated or malware could be installed, to make sure that we had safe and accurate elections using electronic machines. But in the early 2000s, Diebold, which was a voting machine vendor very similar to ES&S or Dominion would be today, their source code was publicly online, and this was exposed through a woman named Bev Harris's work. And because of this, the lab that it was linked to was investigated, and that was CIBER. And when they went to investigate, what they found was nothing. They literally found no independent test scripts of their own, nothing to prove that they were actually testing these machines, limited paperwork. And they told them that, and they actually revoked their certification. They had an interim certification, and they were trying to be officially certified, but they were still passing machines that were used in elections, and they took it away. They said, no, you guys are not actually checking these machines. And CIBER lost its accreditation. But right before it lost its accreditation, Jack Cobb left CIBER. He left CIBER with a man named Sean Southworth, who also had a history of doing the same thing. And when they left CIBER, they went to another lab called Wiley Labs, or Wild Labs. And what's really weird is all these labs are based in Huntsville, Alabama, which is where Pro V&V is, but we'll get to that point. Public documents through the Election Assistance Commission were given to the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, essentially saying that, yeah, we took some of their employees to meet the federal requirements. Like Wiley Labs had sent that, saying we took these employees from CIBER. And that's how Jack Cobb and Sean Southworth were connected. So they are literally overseeing a lab that is just rubber stamping machines, and they don't get any kind of, repercussions for their actions. They just get new keys. Here you go. Because Wiley was also certifying. The only difference is they didn't lose their interim accreditation like CIBER did. They worked together. They worked in conjunction. CIBER was kind of the software part, and Wiley was kind of the hardware part. And they both had a role. Wiley did not lose its certification. CIBER did. And so CIBER employees, Sean Southworth and Jack Cobb, jumped ship to Wiley Labs, where they stayed for a few years. Sean Southworth, I'm not 100% sure where he is today, but I'm pretty sure he works at SAIC. And Jack Cobb, he made his own voting lab called Pro V&V. And that is one of the only two places allowed to certify your vote in 2025, 2024, 2023, 2022. Like, this has been going on for some time. There's only two labs that are allowed to do it. He went from overseeing untested machines in a place that lost certification through the Election Assistance Commission to the Election Assistance Commission, allowing him to run his own lab where he's still doing that same thing. More often than not, he's signing off on things as de minimis or minimal that don't qualify. I mean, software and hardware changes. In 2020, there was a lawsuit in Georgia where Cobb got called out for not actually checking to see if something's de minimis or not. He said that he went based off of what the lab said, which is the same thing that he was doing in CIBER in the early 2000s. Federal government doesn't do any independent testing of their own. They don't go and double check his findings. They don't have their own lab where they're like, okay, we're going to make sure it's legit. No, they just read what he says and they sign off on it. And they're signing off on things that are not, in their own words, de minimis. To a booth and touch the touch screen to choose your vote or fill your ballot into a scanner, there's a good chance it may have passed through Jack Cobb's lab, who has done apparently minimal independent testing of their own. So this is my first YouTube video beyond my introduction. It may not be perfect, and I'm probably going to spend more time editing this than I did recording it. But in the next section, I'm going to go into some of the things he's done in his time at Pro V&V, including shell corporations, weird deals or loans with shady banks, and how he got himself into the voting infrastructure, and even the weird corruption in the EAC where they have backdated documents and just straight up said lies to protect Cobb. This isn't history. This is something happening now, and no one's watching except for us.